back to Barnstable This Morning. I'm Sarah Colvin, and joining me live in studio, our Assistant Town Manager, Mark Ells. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good.
So lots of stuff to cover today. Want to talk a little bit, we'll start with e-permitting. Of course, we are moving forward with that. I understand Viewpoint made a presentation to Town Council last week. Tell me a little bit about where we are in the process and what e-permitting is going to do for us here in Barnstable.
Well, we started looking at this actually a couple of years ago as it began to emerge as a technology that municipalities were utilizing. And we began to hear more and more about it as we went to the more regional or statewide or even nationwide discussions on being able to provide better service to your customer. There's two sides to the e-permitting. There's what the customer sees, and then there's what the employee sees, and both very important, and both a big part of the consideration that we had in trying to select a vendor to provide us with the e-permitting. We went through a statewide review of what other communities are using in Massachusetts, and even broader than that. We looked at what the county was doing because they've got a very aggressive effort to support the communities on the Cape with e-permitting. And after we had meetings with 3 vendors and looked at their products, chose a primary that we thought best suited Barnstable's needs, went out and did a reference check on them, began to look at both sides of that, what the customer sees and what the employee will utilize and what they will develop as a database as a result of having this system in place, and came to Viewpoint as the vendor that we were recommending. Great.
And so talk to me a little, it's going to take a while for obviously this to kind of be implemented and for everyone to be trained on the system. How long of an implementation time are we looking for this before we go live?
Probably 8 months is a safe estimate. If it can be sooner, then that would be great. A lot of it isn't, the systems are there from the vendor side. It's taking the information that we have, putting it into our systems, training our staff, and then educating our public to truly go live. We can be using it behind the scenes, but to truly go live, make it available, we made a commitment to our town council certainly in asking for the funding for this, that we would not only communicate it, but we would try to provide the tools to our residents and the businesses that come here to Barnstable to get permits, that we would provide them whatever they needed so they could become familiar quickly and just get right back to business and make it even easier. They don't even have to come to Town Hall in many cases. They can just 24/7 go online and hopefully get what they need.
It's pretty amazing, and it's really comprehensive too, from what I understand. People will be able to get permits for everything from building permits to dog licenses.
Yes, and much more. And again, it's developing that. We're in a 5-year contract with this vendor. So I think what you'll see is exactly what you've just referenced: building and dog building, taking the lion's share of the 8 months,
right,
to go live with. And and I think that it will allow our resident and businesses businesses are familiar with this at this point. I think the communication issue may be more to our resident who wants to do this online but just isn't familiar with it. So we're going to do some tutorials and provide some help to them so that hopefully they'll be able to get right online. They'll be able to use a credit card. They'll be able to get their permit. They won't have to run to Town Hall. Some of the other nice features are they can do things like check the status of a permit. Even as simple as they don't see it moving, so they can email or call and say, geez, I thought this was going to be done by such and such a date, what's going on? And I think all of those will help to serve our resident and the businesses better.
Very cool. Let's talk a little bit about the shooting range. Of course, still many things going on over there, but Town Council last week approved spending some money for an environmental study. Can you talk to me a little bit about what the study is going to do? Sure.
Well, right from the beginning, the manager made a commitment that, upon reopening this, he'd do it in a manner that was safe, both operationally and environmentally. And really, this is beginning to assess the environmental component of that commitment. We want to understand what the extent of lead from the range may be, and then to prepare to move forward with managing it properly. There's been lots of information flying around about concentrations and, you know, and it's correct. There is lead at the shooting range, and certainly a piece of lead has a very high concentration of lead in it.
Right.
And it is not, you know, the standards that are referenced are for your backyard, for example. That's what the state's looking at. That's how clean it would be, meaning it may not even be in existence in the soil in your yard. So of course, somewhere where you're putting lead is going to have higher concentrations. We know that. That wasn't a surprise at all. What we want to understand better is, because specifically it wasn't managed directly under the town manager's office, we don't necessarily have a complete feeling for where those lead deposits are. And then once we know where they are, we'll go in and assess them further and understand what might need to be done. Can it be something as simple as reclaiming it? Because there's actually a market value to the lead, so that can help to offset the cost of reclaiming. Or do we have to do some level of remediation? And so that'll be the next steps in this process.
Do we know when the study is going to begin? Is it something right away?
Immediately, and they're looking to have results this calendar year. So we'll see if that's the tentative schedule that they gave the Director of Public Works, so we'll see if they can deliver on that.
There's not much time left in this calendar year, so that's
no, but they were going to move very quickly on it, and they had their resources in place, and that will give us some answers. You know, that in combination with us filing an environmental notification form with under the Mass Environmental Protection Act, NEPA. Will then screen, that really isn't focused on the environmental issues as much as it's focused on the exchange of land, municipal use to conservation, and vice versa for the, I don't know if the viewing public is familiar, but one of the main issues relative to the range that still exists is that the range is located on the West Barnstable Conservation Area. That is not considered a passive recreational use by the Division of Conservation Services of Massachusetts government, and therefore they're asking us to find another parcel that would be designated as conservation land, and then we will have this parcel where the range is revert to being a municipal use. And so it's a land swap that they're looking for.
Right.
And so that's what triggered the review under the environmental notification in NEPA. And so we've prepared that document. We expect to file it this week. There's 30 days of review and comment, and then NEPA has about 20 plus days to review it. So we would hope to hear a determination this year as well. So if we get the environmental assessment and the results of this, we'll know much better by the next council meeting. Meaning the one where the shooting range will come up in January, as to how we'll proceed on this.
Great. So so that's a good update there. And Mark, just one final thing. Wanted to talk a little bit about transit. Of course, I know that you are a member of the Regional Transit Authority Board and had a meeting recently. Tell me a little bit about. Can you give us an update on what's going on transit-wise?
Sure. I'm the Town of Barnstable's representative on the board of directors to the RTA. So we actually meet quite a bit. Tom Cahere is a very active and inclusive sort of leader over there, so he'll call us in to discuss many issues. The specific issues we discussed last week were related to the services that are provided in Barnstable, the growth that we've seen relative to those services, any impact on future assessments, because we get assessed in Barnstable based on boardings and based on miles of service in the town. So if our ridership is up, the annual fee that we pay goes up.
Interesting.
So yeah, so they brief us on that, but they also want to make sure that the routing makes sense and it's equitable. So those are the sorts of discussions we were having relevant to that issue. We were talking a little bit about the trolley out on Main Street and the ridership, because one of the things we do is assess all the routes and the services provided to make sure that they are what we want to be paying for.
Right.
So that issue, we had preliminary discussions about that. He brought me up to speed on some of the transit-oriented development they're doing over there at the RTA site, which really, they're going to the next step where they're bringing on a professional to help them manage implementation, to look for public-private partnerships over there, because I think you're familiar with what they're doing, but they're looking to redevelop that entire area as an appropriate use abutting and around a transit center.
Exactly, so whether it be retail, affordable
It's a
housing,
real
that sort of
mix
thing, lots
of-
of different things.
There's a real mix of what they're proposing to do, so.
Great. Well, Mark, thank you for the update. Always a pleasure to have you join us here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Mark Ells is our Assistant Town Manager here in the town of Barnstable. More to come on the show. Dr. Mary Chkowski, Superintendent of Schools, is next. But first, we're going to go out and look at this beautiful morning view and get to it. We'll be back with more of our